There's no handout this evening. No Jewish text, no modern philosopher, no Bible, no Talmud, no Terry Eagleton, Charles Taylor, Ludwig Wittgenstein, John Cottingham. It's only me this evening. I wake up in the morning and everything seems normal. The radio plays, NPR gives the news, I can turn on CNN, more news now being read from behind a desk. The news may be tragedy, Los Angeles fires, war in Congo, savage fighting continuing in Ukraine, refugee roundups in my hometown of Chicago. Some news is hopeful, a fragile ceasefire in Gaza, hostages coming home. Financial news, for me anyhow, usually incomprehensible. What, after all, is Bitcoin? AI chips, new technologies, China. Sports news, predictable, Chicago teams in last place. Entertainment, filled with Academy Award speculation. There is an appearance of normal life everywhere. Stores are open. Louise and I went to the movies. And then I read of a Nazi salute by the president's closest advisor at a rally celebrating the inauguration, and not one member of the president's party condemned the act. And the Anti-Defamation League yawns it away with the suggestion that we all remain calm. Where are we? We listen to and read the news of the intimidating memos and directives being sent to federal employees. We read of a halt on foreign aid that could lead to real suffering all across the globe. We read of a halt on domestic spending, but then a quick reverse because of a court order, but maybe the reverse has not really taken effect. Unlawful firings, laws ignored, ongoing roundups of refugees, no way to claim a legal right to asylum at the United States border, a halt on any and all refugees to enter the country. We hear more about intimidation in the federal government workplace, new investigations by government agencies into all kinds of entities, nonprofits, PBS, NPR, all seemingly motivated by personal payback, vengeance, the end to DEI and the aspirations for racial equality, the attack on GLBTQ+, the real fear and pain that results. We decided when we heard this in the Temple Micah office that we would hang our usual June Pride flag outside the building, and we would show this whenever services are on Shabbat. An executive order on anti-Semitism that can only be called a farce, and that it is really intimidation of foreign students in an attempt to curtail free speech, all this by a person whose strongest and closest supporters include real anti-Semites, including some he provided with get-out-of-jail cards. The list is too long, as are my remarks this evening, for which I apologize. I will therefore simply say it. The current President of the United States has no regard for the rule of law and does not feel bound by the law in any meaningful sense of the word. Our President yearns to be a dictator. We have to repeat it just to let it sink in. The rule of law is scorned. We are in an era of loyalty oaths to a single individual, but even with all this, there remains a facade of normalcy. It's terrifying. I was terrified when I saw an advertisement for the Super Bowl. Underneath the facade, we have entered a different world. We have little idea as to what to do, but I do know that we cannot be afraid to say it aloud. We have to be able to say the truth as we see it, and we must not be afraid. I will use the word fascist. I studied the word fascist for a while during a very, very, very busy day, too busy a day for me, but I read many definitions of fascism on the internet today, and so I'll just take snippets of many, many ones There are many websites with complete, long descriptions, analysis, history, but a few phrases. Prioritizes the nation over the individual, ultranationalist, authoritarian political philosophy, combining elements of nationalism, militarism, economic self-sufficiency, and totalitarianism. Opposes communism, socialism, pluralism, opposes individual rights, opposes equality and democratic government. I said check, 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 check on each one. So then the emails came pouring into my email box the last 10 days, pouring in with questions from many of you and others. In my private, cynical moments of myself, I said to myself, and excuse me, I apologize in advance, I didn't study that page of the Talmud that has the answers for all of this. That is, there is no page of the Talmud that has the answers for all of this. But I will read selectively from one or two of the emails that came in to many of us. My dearest friends, I read, I don't know if you have the answers. I don't expect you do. I just hope you can help us think. I want to pose this specific and hypothetical question. If I am someone who works with DEI experts, who supports their work, or even if I don't and I'm told to report on them hiding their work, how am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to do? In larger terms, the question is, how do I survive physically and morally in these times? What if I fear for my life, for the life of my family, against revenge? I'm not articulating this eloquently. I can't. I don't want to hide from my fear, and I don't know how to deal with it other than by hiding. I love you for being there. XXX, I'm keeping this anonymous. My response, dear XXX, your question is the question of our times. We have a president who has no regard for the rule of law, and a president for whom the phrase ethical norm is a foreign language from a distant planet. He is enabled by a large band of sycophants, fascists, bigots of all stripes. I believe we must resist in each and every way we can. This means we must continually recommit ourselves to our own beliefs. We must protest what we can when we can. We must find and support new leaders who can speak for us and remind us what we believe. Last week, I wrote these sentences that stay with me, and this was for Martin Luther King Shabbat. As I was considering the text for the handout of that week, I wrote at the end my own sentence: there is a non-negotiable moral order that emanates from the highest autonomous authority. We call this the Sinai Covenant. I am bound by it. A non-negotiable moral order that emanates from Sinai. Then I have read this paragraph from our old prayer book several times in the last days. I find that it strengthens me. I wrote my email friend, quote, the astonishing thing about the human being is not so much his intellect and bodily structure. The astonishing and least comprehensible thing about him is his range of vision, his gaze into the distance, his lonely passion for ideas and ideals for which he will stand till he dies. The profound conviction he entertains that if nothing is worth dying for, nothing is worth living for. End of quote. In our old blue prayer book, Gates of Prayer, you can find it on page 668. It was written by a British philosopher of the 19th century who was born in India. I then finished this email. I wish there were more I could say. But then my email friend responded, thank you. Just to continue this thinking, how does a non-negotiable moral order manifest itself in an office setting where people are threatened if they don't out their friends and colleagues? What is a simple person to do? If this person protests, will their life and livelihood be threatened? How do we help people have the courage to do the right thing? Over the years, I asked myself what I would do if they came for my neighbor. Do I have a neighbor that would hide me? My response, quote, resistance to tyrants is obedience to God, end of quote, attributed to both Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. I then continue. I think that in an office setting, if a person is threatened to give names, they simply refuse. If they lose their job, we have to be communally prepared to support them financially, and we should organize ourselves to do so. We should do this publicly and proudly. This is really happening in the workplace, and it is not simply blowhard publicity. I would like to know more about it, and I would work to create real community support funds for people in need. I've written the Jewish Federation of Washington about this to see what they are doing. We could create jobs banks for people who lose their jobs for this reason and make heroes out of businesses of all kinds who give jobs to these people. Well over 30 years ago, I wrote this person, when my own children were very young, I asked my dear friend, XXXX, a Christian pastor at a neighboring congregation, I asked him if he would hide my children if it ever came to that. He looked across the table and said to me, yes, no question. He said that he would not be able to live with himself as a Christian if he did not. I simply believe that we are in a moment when we cannot simply go along. Exodus chapter 23, I wrote, I since looked it up, it is chapter 23 of Exodus, teaches us to, quote, not follow the multitude to do evil, end of quote. If this is our Torah, we have to live by it when it is hard. I also try to remember this. 10 righteous people could have saved Sodom and Gomorrah. 10 righteous people could have saved Sodom and Gomorrah. We have to be part of that tiny minority that will someday save this country. It is very easy for me to write this. I pray that if called, I would live by it. That's the end. As the days passed, this email exchange, I looked through my 2017 folder. I save folders sometimes for particularly hazardous times, so I opened up my 2017 folder on my computer, and I found this, a different email exchange with another Micah member. He wrote, I saw this, and it really struck a nerve for me. If you've ever wondered what you would have done in 1930s Germany, you're doing it now. My friend then continued, I've tried to reflect on this daily with humility and conviction. As John F. Kennedy said, quote, one person can make a difference and everyone should try. I now understand Thomas Paine's observation, quote, that these are the times that try men's souls, end of quote, end of that email. My friend has it right. The Talmud puts it to us like this. We do have a little Talmud. Quote, whoever is able to protest against the transgressions of his own family and does not do so is held responsible for the transgressions of his family. Whoever is able to protest against the transgressions of the people of his community and does not do so is responsible for the transgressions of his community. Whoever is able to protest against the transgressions of the entire world and does not do so is held responsible for the transgressions of the entire world. End of quote. This goes on. You can go home. Shabbat, page 54b. Again, the Talmud, we all know this one. In a place where no one behaves like a human being, you strive to be one. End of quote. Dear friends, our souls are on trial. I believe that the primary challenge of our times is to learn how to respond. I believe as Jews we have a moral responsibility to our covenantal bond. Or as Simon the Righteous would say, the world stands on three things: Torah, prayer, and act of loving kindness. But the other Simon, Ben Gamliel, said the Torah stands on three things: justice, truth, and peace. You see, we are a morally rooted people, and we have deep reservoirs of strength. What has our people, after all, not endured? I urge you to subscribe to Diana Butler Bass's inspiring newsletter, The Cottage. She wrote this week, and Diana Butler Bass was our guest speaker on Yom Kippur. I draw great sustenance from her. I'm actually having lunch with her next Friday, so maybe next weekend or the weekend after I'll be able to give you some of her wisdom. But this is what she wrote. These are my 10 W's, building for the fire. And she wrote about, she has a picture of a single house in Los Angeles that remained standing while everything around it burned to the ground. She took this picture of this house as a metaphor for the period we are doing. Building for the fire, my 10 W's. Wake up every day. Sleep is important, but hiding under the covers is bad. Number 2, welcome the day every day. With gratitude, say thank you first thing when you wake up. Life is the most fleeting gift. Remember Stephen Hawking, where there's life, there's hope. Number 3, walk every day. Get fresh air and exercise. Walk to feel the ground under your feet. Notice the little things, because that's the way through the next 4 years. Next, be with others every day. Don't isolate yourself. Reach out or connect with someone every single day. And then, of course, because it's Diana Butler Bass, she writes, go to church or synagogue. Hang out with people you trust. Next, I think this is number 5. I didn't number these. Work most days, but take Shabbat too. Keep doing your work, do what you love, practice your vocation, and then these great words, be an everyday hero wherever you are. Next, write every day, weekly, often. Keep a journal of these days. Have a way to work through your fears. You may think you don't want to remember any of this, but one day you or someone who comes after you, you will be grateful to know your story of now. Next, watch the news as able. You must stay informed. The arsonists want you ignorant. Support local journalism and be cautious with the sources you read. Next, this is a fascinating one. Wide sight. The next W, wide sight, a practice to develop. Broaden your perspective by looking to the periphery. Remind yourself to look toward the edges of your field of vision. What's there? What's not immediately obvious in the world? Is there something on the periphery that is helpful or hopeful? Weep whenever. Embrace whatever emotions come up. I've cried many days in recent months, but I've laughed too. Don't judge how you feel on any given day or any given hour. And then the last W of the 10, wonder as much as possible. Go out into nature. Spend time in a museum. And she writes, get obsessed with space photos from the Webb telescope. Anything that connects you to beauty and deepens your awareness of awe. Embrace mystery. Ask unanswerable questions, but not in emails to me. Awe is pro-social, she writes, and has been shown to reduce polarization. So the 10 W's: wake up, welcome the day, walk, be with others, work right, watch the news, practice wide sight, weep and wonder. Keep it simple. These 10 things, Diana Butler Bass writes, seem like a good foundation for a fireproof house. We don't want this disaster, but the wildfire is burning. We want to survive, we want to help others, and we want to shape a better future from the ashes. Let's make sure we can withstand the storm. End of Diana Butler Bass quote. So at Micah, we will continue this conversation as a way of weathering the storm in every single forum that we have. I promise you that. We have, after all, as my Trua t-shirt and my cap teach us, we have resisted tyrants since Pharaoh. We can do it. Shabbat Shalom.